Great. Well, welcome everybody. It's lovely to have you here on this Friday afternoon. We're going to walk you through this wonderful technology, which is field maps, and it's a lot of fun. We've been playing around with it now for a while, and I know you probably have all kinds of reasons for wanting to do this. So without further ado, we will get started. But before we get into the technical side of things, I just wanted to orient us into who we are, the group that's putting on this workshop. We are called IGIS, Informatics and GIS program. We're a statewide program under the University of California Ag and Natural Resources Group. And UCANR is this big network of people across cooperative extension offices out in the counties, on research and extension centers, and on affiliated campuses. And we do all kinds of work to help California be a better place, to help California agriculture, natural resources, nutrition, youth development. And we do this through a number of ways, but one of the ways we do it is through these statewide programs. And you might have heard of things like 4-H or CalFresh or UC Integrated Pest Management. Those are all under the umbrella of UCANR. Most of you know this, you're part of it. And our group, IGIS, is a small group, but we just really love to help people incorporate spatial data and spatial data tools into their work. And so that's what we're going to do today. This is us. And I'm going to be giving some presentation slides at the beginning to set the stage. Sean is going to be taking over with the hands-on workshop, but the rest of us are going to be behind the scenes. So if you have any questions or something's not working right, you can go in the chat and somebody will respond to you. And if you're interested in just this technology in general, I encourage you to go to our website. We have lots of stuff going on. We do office hours, but we do other trainings and all kinds of stuff. So a lot of fun. Check it out. And that's who we are, who you are. We've got a predominance of folks from California. And if you would be so kind, if you could give us some information about yourself in the chat. If you're comfortable doing so, tell us your name. If you want to, tell us what you hope to get out of this workshop. And then give us a quick thumbnail on how your experience level with field data collection and GIS and field maps. For 1 being beginner to 5 being expert. And I'm just gonna get my chat open here to see if anybody's bold enough to start. Who's gonna be the first one? We're really just give us a sense of where you're at. Let's see, I'll give it a couple more minutes or maybe a few more. Yay! Thanks, David. Great. Great, terrific. So yeah, setting up the field map system. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Great, Genoa. Yeah, a 1. Terrific. So 1s are absolutely fine. Don't think you have to be a 5 to get something out of this workshop. So I'm going to close my chat. Thanks, Priyanka. I'm going to close my chat and just keep going, but you guys keep doing that. I love to read it later. Oh, I am so sorry. There was just an alarm in my house. Anyway, we're going to move on. It's not going. Okay, so what we're going to talk about here is why field maps, why we might want to use these field maps, and you might want to collect GPS data in the fields. In the field, collect points, lines, polygons. You might want to add specific content to those data. You want to add records to a table of existing features. So you might be going out and monitoring tree crowns or something else. You might want to use your mobile device in the field. You might want to collect photos of the thing you're looking at and have those be automatically georeferenced. You might need to work offline on occasion. You might need to add your data to an existing database. And you might want to make gorgeous and useful maps and web apps that use that field data that you've collected. And key to all of this is you want to do it easily. I come from the era where we were using all these Trimble devices, and it was kind of a pain in the behind to get all the data lined up and post-processed, etc. So ease of use is a big key thing here. But Field Maps doesn't do everything for everybody. It's not a great navigation tool. It's not going to, lead you to something. It's not a great citizen science or community science tool because it requires an organizational license to use. It's really designed for members of a team, one of these, sort of part of an Esri organization. There are options for crowdsourcing data, so if you're interested in that, please do ask these questions of the rest of the team. Survey 123, which is another Esri app, is a good option for that. But today we're going to focus on field maps. And just to get us started, during pandemic lockdown, I started using field maps, and I live in Berkeley, and so just started tracking where I was going, and it was springtime, as you guys remember from COVID, and so everything was so beautiful. So I started walking around Berkeley and taking notice of gorgeous trees and adding them to my database. And I created this web app. I used my phone there on the left. I created this web app, this map online. I have got it symbolized in ArcGIS Online, so my more recent walks show up in this brighter color, but you can, change all this stuff. And so it's kind of, for me, this has been really a fun way of exploring my town, and it's all done via my smartphone and field maps. So what we're going to talk about today is how to do this. I'm going to give you a quick intro to GIS and Esri software. This will probably be review for some of you. We're going to talk about what WebGIS is and how to think about making web maps and web apps in the cloud and why we do this. When we move into the cloud with GIS, there's a few things we've got to pay attention to, including formats and projections and sharing. I'll touch on those. And then I'll spend the rest of the time giving you an example of the field maps workflow. And then Sean's going to take over and do the hands-on stuff. So quick intro, then we're going to be using the Esri platform, and that's the premier GIS platform, although there are many, many alternatives. We are going to be working in the Esri ecosystem of software today. And the idea behind this is a GIS is simply a way of putting the rich four-dimensional world into a computer for spatial analysis and visualization. And typically that happens by creating these layers that are georeferenced. And so we strip the world into these layers, these data layers, and then we can pull them back together again to do analysis. And the way we've done that from the origins of GIS through to, just over a decade ago was on a desktop machine where you had your machine, you loaded the license on it, you worked locally, you downloaded data, and you worked locally on your computer, and the license existed on the computer. But since about 2012, we've moved into the WebGIS realm, which is, up to now, and it's evolving as we speak. And in the Esri ecosystem, we can talk about working still on the desktop with the software ArcGIS Pro, which many of you probably have, where again, you get the license and you download it and install it on your computer, or you can work in the cloud in ArcGIS Online. And so Field Maps works with both of these, but we're going to be primarily focusing on ArcGIS Online today. And when we talk about WebGIS, we're really talking about creating and using web maps, and these are these support documents, this basic online maps with some custom symbology. This is where you're you're going to hold all of your spatial data. You can use those web maps to create web apps, and these are like that Field Maps product I was showing you that I had made. These are graphically appealing, and there's many ways that you can think about these web apps. Story maps, for example, are very popular. Those are web apps. Dashboards, smartphone apps. We're going to play around with some of this today. And then, of course, when we do GIS, we're really interested in analysis, and we can do a lot of analysis in the cloud now. We're going to focus mostly on these two here on the left-hand side, web maps, which can be used to create web apps. And so some examples here, some graphic examples of a web map might be, how do I map all these features in Web Map Viewer? A web app might be, how do I put field maps on my phone? Or how do I create a story map? Or how do I create an interactive display of the data that I've gathered? And then, of course, web analysis. There's all kinds of things we can do when we analyze spatial data in the cloud, which we're not going to cover today. But if you are interested in this, we're doing another workshop on ArcGIS Online later. So since we are going to be working in the cloud today, there's a few things that we should remember about GIS in the cloud, or WebGIS. And again, we can move back and forth between your local instance of ArcGIS Pro and your cloud instance of ArcGIS Online. But there's a few considerations when you work in the cloud. And the first is data formats. So local data, when we're thinking about not cloud data, but working on our desktop, when we work with GIS data, typically we're thinking about our data in a geodatabase, or data as a shapefile, or data as a grid. And these are all stored locally and worked on your computer. But when we work in the cloud, we can upload our local data and use it in ArcGIS Online, but more commonly, we can gather data in cloud native formats. And those are typically called layers with services. And layers are the spatial data and the symbology, and then services are how those data can be used, how they're shared, what can you do with them. And there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff in the cloud that you don't really pay attention to when you're just working on ArcGIS Pro. But I'm mentioning it because some of the terminology is slightly different. And Esri's terminology is what I have here on the bottom of the slide. Instead of a shapefile, you have a feature layer. Instead of a grid, you might have an image layer or an elevation layer. So these are different terminology. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, when you work in the cloud with WebGIS in the cloud, there's so much data. There's such a great access to data. The sources are they've proliferated and they're fantastic. And two of the common ones you'll use if you do work in the Esri ecosystem are here, ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Living Atlas of the World. You guys have probably interacted with some of these. ArcGIS Living Atlas of the World is the curated set of cleaned and authenticated data layers that Esri has for you to use. And the list of these data sets changes on the daily. There's a lot of data in Living Atlas of the World. There's also ArcGIS Online, and that's a repository where everybody who's using ArcGIS Online, who pushes data up and says, have at it, I share this with you, you can find those data too. And so, if you're interested in a curated product, you want to start with Living Atlas of the World, but I'm always looking at ArcGIS Online to find stuff because there's so much cool stuff out there. Another aspect, really quickly, is projections. And if you're used to working in ArcGIS Pro and you're used to working with projections, it's slightly different in when you are in the cloud, because all of the default native projection for everything in ArcGIS Online is called Web Mercator. It's just the easiest way to display spatial data online because you're forever zooming around and panning around. So Web Mercator is kind of the base projection. So if projections are important to you, if you're collecting data and you want to make sure that you're going to be using that subsequently, then you want to spend some time thinking about what your projection should be when you do analysis. And I just have a couple of examples here at the bottom. These are common projections that you'll find associated with spatial data for California. Geographic just means 1 degree latitude equals 1 degree longitude. It's your decimal degrees. Sometimes people will send you data in that. It's not a great projection for doing analysis with. Typically, we do something like Teal Albers, which covers the whole state. It's the statewide projection. Or if we're doing with a study area that's smaller than that, we use Universal Transverse Mercator or UTM. There's 2 zones in California. A lot of municipalities or counties use state plane as their projection, which has even smaller zones. So the point is, don't assume projections are sort of taken care of. Just pay a little bit of attention to this if you are going to be doing analysis on your data. And the final thing to think about is sharing. So when we're dealing with data in the cloud, we always have to decide how that data can be shared. And Esri makes this very straightforward. You can share just with you, it's just my data, the owner. You can share in your whole organization, or you can share to everyone. You can also assign groups to your data. So if there's a section of your organization who's focused on one particular project and another that's on another project, you can create these groups. So Esri has made a lot of this extremely easy. All right, let's get into the workflow. So this is a diagram that I made of showing a generic WebGIS workflow where we are going to be interacting with spatial data in the cloud in ArcGIS Online. And Esri has kind of created or adopted this mantra that for their workflow, data, design, develop. So where's the data coming from? How are you going to design your product? And then how are you going to develop it? And the workflow is the data. Again, there's lots of stuff from ArcGIS Online or from Living Atlas. You also might have your field data, your field boundaries or whatever on ArcGIS Pro. So all of those data are going to get pulled into ArcGIS Online, and they're going to be hosted as these feature layers or image layers or whatever. You're going to do some design work when you pull those into a web map. And there's the default way to do that is in something called Web Map Viewer. But there's also something called Web Map Viewer Classic, which sometimes I like to use because I'm old school. And once you've sort of got that holding tank, you can implement a whole bunch of these Esri apps. You can create a website with something called Experience Builder. You can interact with that data and create what you need to go out in the field with Field Maps app. You can also use those data in a story map or in a dashboard. I've only showed you 4. There's 20 plus of these different widgets or apps that will help you customize and develop what you need. So that's a generic workflow. What we're going to be doing today is a specific workflow. And don't worry about the spaghetti diagram here because Sean's going to go over this. But the idea is the same. It's going to be data, design, develop. You're going to be working with feature layers. You're going to do some configuration. You're going to pull in the field maps designer, and then you're going to customize this through Experience Builder and then go out in the field. When you collect data, that other arrow that's going, back to the left, that means as you update in the field, your hosted feature layer in ArcGIS Online is going to be updated as well. You can also interact with Pro. You can push stuff up from Pro and then have that data you collect in the field cascade down to Pro. So it looks a bit spaghetti-ish right now, but it's going to make sense when Sean goes through this. What it looks like in the field is these are screen captures from my phone, and Sean's going to show you some of his stuff, but there's an app in my phone called Field Maps. I open it, I find that map that that web map that I had stored all of my data in. There's an add data button that's pretty straightforward. Like I said, I'm out walking around, and so I say, okay, let's start a walk, and then that walk starts. I can check the GPS accuracy. I can do some modifications. If the accuracy falls, I'm going to get an alert. I can either stop and wait for the accuracy to increase. I can change my tolerances so that I'm still going to collect that point. You can have some choices there. If you decide to, you can attribute photos with the data that you're collecting. So I told you I was looking at these trees, and so, I would say, okay, I'm going to create a point and I'm going to take a picture of that point. And now that tree has an XY location, it has a photo that is associated with the data that I'm collecting. Sometimes folks ask about external GPSs, and it is possible to, use something more powerful than just your phone. There are standalone GPS options like the survey grade Trimbles. These are quite expensive, and in my opinion, now that I've used the less expensive version, kind of a pain. There are hybrid options where you have an external antenna and then you link that to your mobile device. These are an example here is a Trimble antenna, costs about 1K. It's significantly less than some of the survey grade Trimbles on the left. But there's a lot of new Bluetooth connected GPSs that I found to be really great. A company that I've been using is Bad Elf. They get pretty decent accuracy and they're a lot less expensive than the Trimbles, and they're just seamless, because they're Bluetooth. And so what it would look like in the field if you do this, you'd have your Bluetooth, you just basically connect to that Bluetooth on the Field Maps app. Don't forget to bring an external battery because this stuff does suck down your phone's battery pretty considerably. But you will notice some differences. So just, this is just a quick screen capture, with the iPhone's internal GPS, you can get these sort of bits where you're not picking up a signal, and so you can get an errant position. But with the external GPS, it kind of streamlines that and makes it a lot easier. So okay, so then back in the office, you submit this feature, your file is updated automatically. All that stuff that you gathered in the field is now in your ArcGIS Online. If you've connected to Pro, that data is going to be updated in Pro too. So it's a really straightforward process, and it's a lot of fun, and it's one of the things in one of the areas in GIS where we actually can go outside, which is great. So yeah, just before I turn it over to Sean, if you are interested in more about ArcGIS Online, we've got a workshop next month. And there's also an R workshop if you're interested in that. Everything can be found from our website, which is igis.ucanr.edu. And yeah, on to the workshop.
All right, very, very good. That's a perfect intro into what we're going to be covering. And for the next, I don't know, say 20 minutes or so, maybe a little bit more, this is just going to be show and tell. It's not going to be the hands-on portion of it because right now I want to take a pause to address the main issue that most people have always had in this workshop is not having a UCANR uh, ArcGIS Online account. So what I'm saying is that if you have, say, ArcGIS Online through UC Berkeley or UC Santa Cruz or wherever you might be from, then certain portions of this workshop may not, well, one portion will definitely not work for you, but some of the other functionalities might not work as well. So because each organization's account has different restrictions or can have different restrictions. And then when it comes to a collaborative little segment that you don't necessarily have to work through with us, but it is kind of neat to be able to see the crowdsourcing ability of this app, then you won't be able to like actually participate in the collection on that. So if you do not have an ArcGIS, a UCANR ArcGIS Online account, if you want to throw it in the chat, we have Shane Fire and Robert Johnson here, that both of which can help get you set up with an account in a pinch. We have training accounts just for that. That was kind of the one of the reasons why I sent out a couple emails through the week to is kind of get ready emails is to yeah, just cover this one thing. Fortunately, this workshop doesn't require any kind of data to be downloaded, and even the directions which you received about, I don't know, a little over an hour ago or so, though I'll be going over it in a way that you probably won't need to refer to the directions. You can if you'd like, but this it's mostly about the workflow in this. We don't need to have like specific names that build upon each other or anything like that. I'm gonna share my screen before I forget. Oops, go to the exercise. I'm gonna just reduce this down for now, and I don't need to have Zoom stuff up. Good. So one of the first things that you will be doing, and actually this, we can say this is a hands-on portion right now. Log into your UCANR ArcGIS Online. So ArcGIS Online, login, and then sign in. And if you're able to do that, then see here, we got new features in ArcGIS Online. We're getting a pop-up. There was recently an update, apparently, in the last week or so. So, and this is important. This is once you've got logged on and you're good to go, then again, this is just going to be show and tell. We call this a field introduction to ArcGIS field maps, but really this workshop's going to be combining a collection of 4 different apps together. Maggie mentioned them in her introduction. We're going to look at ArcGIS Online. We're going to work with the Map Viewer. We're going to work with the Field Maps Designer, and then Experience Builder. And then for a little bonus at the end, we usually have plenty of time to show how to add your data to ArcGIS Pro in case that's something that you're interested in doing. It's kind of a nifty little kind of bonus thing. So it's like 4 with a bonus of 5 apps that we'll be looking at. What I love about this particular workflow is it's very elegant and efficient. And so even if you have experience with field maps, as I see that a couple of you do, then that combination of apps in this workflow might be interesting to you. And one thing I might note too is that even though we're going to be working with just simple like tree data inventory kind of a collection that we're going to put together, these same ideas are transferable to all kinds of different projects or surveys that you might want to do, even though we'll just be covering the basics. So once you've logged into ArcGIS Online, you can just sit back and watch for a second in case you're not accustomed to ArcGIS Online. I'm not gonna get into the weeds too much on it, but it's important to call out this part of the application because it's the hub where everything works around. So it's your field maps, designers connected to this, your map viewers connected to this, experience builder, everything is kind of works around the ArcGIS Online's what you call ArcGIS Online as a hub. So when you bring it up, it's going to usually come up with 2 different things, either your content or your home. Typically, home's not really important. It's just a splash page just to go across the top in quick order. Gallery is interesting to me in a lot of cases because it helps me peruse around what is available through my organization. So anything that's shared organizationally, even if it's not all published all the way to the point where everybody online can see it through ArcGIS Online's portal, you have access to, say, in this case, Sonoma fire history, parcels, parcel data, you name it. There's all not just layers, but maps, applications that have been built, web apps, story maps, experience builder products. So you get all that stuff at your fingertips. It's pretty neat. Moving on, map. When you go into map, this is the map viewer. This is where we're going to be working very, very briefly. We're going to just we're not going to get into deep into any separate portion, but the map viewer is what we're looking at right now. As you see, the conditional ribbon across the top, or the ribbon across the top, has reduced now down to this little hamburger stack in the top left-hand corner. So if I click on that, now you see the options of the gallery and scene, which I'm going to skip over right now because we don't need to get into that. Notebooks, that's kind of interesting. I'll click on that. The reason why I call this out is that you can now do more analysis in the online environment as opposed to the way it used to be, where all your real deep analysis was done in something like your desktop application like ArcGIS Pro. But now you can do analysis in here or automated processes using Python. And one of the reasons why I bring this up right now is that Shane Fire and Genoa Star have just recently completed a 3-part workshop on Python that could some of that programming can be incorporated into these notebooks. Depending on your project, like intent and what you're working on. Something important, Maggie noted this, is groups. So one of the, well, she kind of touched on it, alluded to it. So there's sharing settings that you can use. And one of the ways that you can share data, and this is very important to something like field maps, is creating groups that you only want to share the data collection capabilities with. So, and for example, if you had some kind of specialized scientific project, you don't want to have it shared to everybody. So any random person could come in there and put bad data in because they don't know what they're doing. You can have a core team of people that might be interested in collecting a certain type of data. And this is where you would do that. You'd go in here, you could create a group, you can go to the groups that you've already created over time. So I have a number of them in here. And then those groups be the only ones that are able to work with this, with the data, say, through field maps. I'm going to come back to content. I'm going to just touch on organization here before too long. Uh-oh, I got some odd message there to review that, or I'll punt that to Shane Fire, who's our license administrator. So there's it works on a credit basis. What credits are available for certain processes. This doesn't pertain too much to field maps, but it is important because you can you can use up your organization's credits fairly quick if you're doing heavier processing, like geocoding a bunch of addresses, or in my case, I've published a number of rasters into our ArcGIS Online, which consumes credits pretty quick. And then there's licenses and members and so forth. That's an administrative thing that I don't need to show you. Back to content. This pop-up is really persistent. So once you get into your content, this is actually useful for many of you. If you worked in ArcGIS Online, I know this is quite a review. Starting from left to right, we have our folders across the left. I have a whole bunch of these in here, field maps training being one of the ones that I'll be working from here today. But you can organize your data within these folders. And these data that I'm referring to ranges from anything from your feature layers, hosted feature layers, web maps. There's tons of these. If I keep on going from page to page, and I get to move my zoom out of the way so I can do that, you can see that there's quite a few. If I go to all of my content, you'll see more things like experience builder, themes that work for story maps. You can get anything from CSV file. You can see there's tons of different options in here. This would be part of our ArcGIS Online workshop, which will be coming up next month if you want to know more about this. So now this is one of my favorite things. say one of my favorite buttons, at least on this, is the little cluster of 9 dots up at the top right-hand corner. And if I click on that, you get to see the constellation of, I don't even know how many, now it keeps on growing, the number of peripheral apps to ArcGIS Online, and not counting ArcGIS Pro, which is also can can be synced with this, as we'll see in the end. But we'll see today we'll be working with Map Viewer, the Field Maps Designer Experience Map. By the way, you can drag if you have, oops, I didn't mean to go out of that. I just tried to move it around. Close that for now. So if I grab one of these and drag it around, it will shuffle that into a different position. Before I continue on and forget about it, I want to mention a shout out to there's other applications that can do a lot of the things that Field Maps can do. In fact, Field Maps has absorbed a lot of the functionality of two specific apps that we've used quite a bit in the past, one of which being Survey 123. That's a tabular oriented data collection app that has that allows you to collect kind of more complicated data structures, so for very lengthy surveys. And it's one of the main values of this is if you want to create a collection app that is shareable to everybody, Survey 123 has a function for that, where you can just create a web mapping application, so an online application that can be brought up on a phone. As long as you have internet connectivity, you can share it to all of California if you wanted to, if they have the link, and then enter in survey information that way. I say tabular oriented because it isn't oriented on the map so much as on the data structure. There's another one, and I don't know if it's even in here where it might be, is collector. I don't know if they've deprecated that entirely yet because it's been almost entirely absorbed into Field Maps, and that's a more map-oriented application. But I digress. I just wanted to shout out to those. By the way, if you've done data collection or you've built maps for collection in Collector, then that will open right up in Field Maps. You can open it in. They're compatible. Let's say that what you've built for Collector will open up in Field Maps. So we'll be coming back to these very soon. And in fact, I think we are, before we dive into the next step, this might be a good time to just take a, say, 7-minute break. I'm going to check the chat because as soon as we come back, then we'll be hands-on. Any questions? Go to the chat. Good. Robert's taking care of my account. All right. Very good. All right. Let's return at 1:50 and we'll dive into creating a feature layer that we'll be collecting data on. And I might mention again, we almost could call this workshop ArcGIS Online, Map Viewer, Field Maps Designer, and Experience Builder workshop, because all of those things connected together is what creates our nicely functional field map that we can open up on our cell phones. And the first thing to do to set this up is we will create a new item. So if you go to your content tab in your ArcGIS Online, go down and click on new item at the top left-hand corner. And then we're going to look at the various options there are here. We're going to use the feature layer, but just you can peruse what other options there are on here. The only other, well, there's not many others that I use here, but there's in fact, probably 99% of the time I'm creating feature layers. You can also drag and drop files in like CSV files to create into your in from your device. I guess maybe not 99% of the time I'm doing a feature layer creation, but I can sometimes bring in other things from my desktop or so forth or online. But for right now, we're going to create a feature layer from scratch. So click on that feature layer and you'll see a variety of options here. And we're going to go with the default, which is the define your own layer. It's the top left or the top side, and getting my zoom out of the way, and you'll click next down at the bottom right-hand corner. So if we go here, we're going to put in here, and I'm going to be doing this from memory. Just note that if the directions are ever so slightly different than what I say, it's not going to be, it's fine. It's going to, just as long as it's intuitive. But we're going to say tree point. Just note though, because I have created the same feature layer so many times in my ArcGIS online, I can't create the same file over and over again because they can't have files that are the same name. For you, you can just say tree point. In my case, I'm going to have to put something behind it just to designate it as a different layer. You don't have to put in, let's say, 44. The something to note, there's a little teeny difference in the directions that that I didn't delete because it might be useful and it might come back. You can the directions say to add other like lines and polygons from here, but I found out just today that stops you from fully using your symbology. You can't change some of the stuff in your symbology if you do that. So you have to do a point layer and a line layer and a polygon layer each separately. But so we're just going to do a point layer for now, tree point. And there's going to be some options here. You can add GPS metadata fields. The only time I can see this really being useful is if you are using some kind of peripheral, like the Bad Elf that Dr. Maggie Kelly would mention, and MLID. There's peripheral Trimble units, Garmin. There's a bunch of peripherals that are available to help improve the accuracy of your GPS. In that, if you're using something like that, you might want to toggle this on if you want really precise information about each point, like your positional accuracy, for example. But if you're just using your cell phone, I would probably suggest just keeping that not checked. But one thing you really likely might want to do is select the second option, enable Z values. So it sounds like some of you are familiar with GIS in general. So you might know that you have your X value is your left and right, or your longitude, and your Y value is north and south, up and down, and Z value is your elevation. So this would say collect elevation for your points as well. And then enable M values. This is for measure values and vertices. I never use that, so I'll skip that. Click next. So one thing that's important here is that you need to put tags in. And if you have those folders that I pointed out in your ArcGIS online content, you might decide to put that in, say, a training folder or field maps training, which I'm not going to do right now. In my case, I'm going to put it in a junk folder. You don't need to do that. You can just leave the default there, is fine. But what you'll need to do is put tags in, and I'm going to say junk just because I create the same layer over and over and over again. I don't need all that redundancy in my ArcGIS online content. So I can use a keyword search in my browser to delete this at a later time, along with everything else in a kind of a purge of like redundant files. But for now, you can put something in there like field map training, tree inventory, whatever the case you might want, whatever's intuitive to help it be discoverable by not just other people if you ever wanted to publish it online for everyone to see, but also for yourself. I use my keyword search to find old files all the time. And so the more intuitive your tags are, the better. And just note, the ArcGIS Online won't let you create a feature layer without a tag. So you need to put something in there. If you type something in, you may need to click enter if it's a new term. If I type something like if I start to type something, it'll give me a variety of them that you can select from. But if it's a new term, then you have to click enter afterwards. And once you've done that, click save. It's going to take just a moment. This is slower than usual. There we go. And then it'll come up. Good. So once it comes up, there's a couple things that you'll want to do. One of which is if you're working in ArcGIS or when you're working with field maps, you'll want to go down and click on, see where it says, if I scroll down just a little bit, there's the underneath layers, it says tree point 4 or tree point in your case. Click on that and you'll see some options come up on the right-hand side. It's important to note that the enable attachments is actually clicked, right? So it's glued on. So you want to have it where you can enable attachments, and because this, then it will allow you to take pictures that get attached to that file. If I go back to tree point, so if you didn't see that, it was at the top left-hand corner of the screen. So if I'm inside my tree point, there's a little back arrow at the top left next to the tree point. Go back. And I'll go to settings. This is important also for field maps. And this is one that it reminds me, there's a lot of cases in GIS where something's just one click away and it can hang you up for hours if you just don't know where that one click is. And this is one of those cases that will stop your field maps from working later on if you don't know to do it. So you go up to settings, go down, and under feature layers hosted, you want to click on the radial button for enable sync. Another, speaking of things that will catch you sometimes, is if there's an option to save, you need to click save. So save is over just a little bit on the right-hand side. Good. So I have this, by the way, I have this across the center of my screen. I usually give a little bit of a presentation at the beginning about how to uh, lay out your screens for a workshop. In the case of this workshop, you probably just need to split your screen with one side being my Zoom and one side being your ArcGIS online / all the other applications we'll be working with. So, because these are the only two screens or the two views that we'll be needing to look at. That said, if I get ahead of you and you don't have time to toggle back and forth, don't hesitate to go into the chat and say, hey, can you show us that again? That's completely understandable. If I need to repeat anything, I'm happy to do it. Or if you just have any general questions. Good. So there, I've created a point feature. Let's do the same thing, but we'll create a line and a polygon. So we'll go up to content again at the top, click on content, pop it up. We'll do the same thing as we did before. Go over to new item at the top left-hand corner, click on feature layer, define your own layer, same as we did before. And by the way, if you get hung up on this, you just want to watch this part. This part is not going to be as critical because it won't be, it's just going to be a little bit of redundancy for the sake of learning. But it will show you how to do for different layers. And if you want to play with it in your app later, there's different ways that you collect line features and polygons versus point layers. And so in this case, we're going to say tree line. And there's just a note in a lot of cases in GIS, you can't leave unders. You see GIS people putting underscores under a lot of things. In this case, it doesn't. It's okay to not add in underscores. I almost do it by habit in a lot of cases, but I know from past experience it's okay to not in this case. So you can have spaces, in other words. So next, we're going to do the drop down and select line layer because we're doing a tree line. You could have said tree path. This could be your jogging path if you wanted to collect data on your jogging routes to map them later or check distances and so forth. But there's we're using a track function in your app at a later time. But we're creating a tree line, and then we'll go down and again click on Z values to click Z values for the vertices along the line and click next. Again, yeah, you can just put it wherever you want inside in your main folder or whatever. And I'm just going to say junk again so I can find it and get rid of it and click save. And it takes a moment there. Good. In the same thing would apply here. We would want to go. I know that by default, well, you won't, if you click on this, enable attachments, it's fine. Go back one at the top left-hand corner and go to settings. Click on settings, scroll down, enable sync. Just get used to that habit of adding in there and click save. What this does by enabling sync is that when you're in the field and if you have any kind of reception or internet connectivity, once you add a feature into your onto your phone, it uploads it, and then any other feature, say you have 5 other people in the field adding data as well, you'll see it popping up on your phone in near real time. This actually came up in a project that Jane Fire and Genoa Star and I were on not too long ago, where we were collecting data on Mediterranean oak borer, and we kind of divided and conquered the data collection between different areas, and we could look on there to see what trees each person had collected uh, uh, Mediterranean oak borer information about and tag information. So I digress again on that. But yeah, so enabling sync is very important. And then clicking save. Once you've done this, we can back up one more time to your contents because we've created this line layer. Go back to content. And we'll do a polygon also. New item. So if you, I'm going to back up there again. So what, oh, dang it, my zoom's in the way. So I'm going to click on new item under my content. Click on feature layer. Define your own layer. Click next. And we can say tree polygon. Make sure I did this earlier when I was playing with it. I forgot to change to polygon. So you gotta make sure you click on that. In this case, I don't really need to know about my enable Z values. I'm not gonna worry about that. Just leave them all unchecked and click next. And tags. And you don't have to change your folder location, but it makes my life easier. If I put them all in one folder, I can purge later. And click save. Let me look at the chat. Okay, cool. So let's see. David, are you good now? I'm gonna looking at the chat here and making sure that everybody's caught up. I see
There's
that.
one setting screen I can't figure out how you got to.
Oh,
It's the
okay.
very last one.
So the settings screen. Okay, I see. I think I have a hunch what you're referring to. I'll back up all the way to my contents, and so we'll go back, dig down through it. Which which layer were you having trouble with? The point, line, or polygon? All?
Yeah, all of them.
Okay, so I'll go into my tree point layer. The if to go to setting, I go all the way over to the top right-hand corner. Do you see that where it says settings? And click setting.
Okay, see that. Okay, thank you.
And then that's where you're missing. Okay, cool. You know what? I know why you probably couldn't see the see settings. If I back up and I go in again, if I am inside at this level, if I click on the tree point layer, then see the settings disappear. Good. So enable sync. And really, you only have to just worry about the point layer on that one. Is the only one that's really could be pertinent here. All right, sounds like everyone's is right on point on this. So we're going to do something that's this is going to be a step that's going to allow us to. Oh yeah, yeah. There's a uh, Maggie's right. There's one of the kind of I'd say annoying things I agree about ArcGIS Online is there's always a button somewhere to do what you want, but you don't necessarily know where it's at. And I'd say I'd extend that to just about any GIS application. I can remember working in a software some years ago, and I worked for 4 hours to find out that there was just a little button in the top hand corner of the screen that would have done all of it for me. And it could have been done in like 10 seconds instead of 4 hours. So that's what we're here for. If you have any questions, just let us know. We're not born with this knowledge, that's for sure. All right, so what we're going to do now is design survey questions around these features, specifically the point layer. So if you're not already in the tree point layer, and this is kind of a hassle too, because you always got to back all the way up to get back in. I'm going to go to my content if you're not already in the point layer and go down to the tree point layer that you just created and click on that. And once you're into the tree point layer, we're going to click on that under the layers, click on the tree point, and you'll see the ribbon across the top will change. And we're going to go over to data. See, there's the overview and then data on the top right-hand corner in the blue ribbon. Click on data. And then we're going to click on fields. So these are the domains of or display domains that you're going to collect data for. Think of these as attributes of for each your features. So you have a feature, you'll have an attribute of say the tree type, or an attribute of a text field is comments, for example. And that's what we're going to add in here right now. And to do that, we go over to the left where it has the nifty little add button and click on add. This is a place where you actually you can't have any you can't have any spaces. So field name is going to be the attribute. So we'll say tree type or type of tree. You can do either one. Underscore type. Field name can't have one, but the display name can have a space. And just so you know, the display name here, think of is the question that the field map is going, or your mobile app's going to be asking about the collected features. So you could do tree type or type of tree. Just know that this is going to be what's going to pop up on your survey. Your string is fine. 256 characters is way too long for any tree, so let's just make it 50. And we'll click Add New Field. Good. So then you see it popped up here, type of tree, and field name is the tree or type underscore tree or tree underscore type. Good. Let's add a couple more. Next one, we'll click and make the field name other tree underscore or just all one word. And then the display name.
Sean, David is asking that should he be seeing global ID in his attribute list?
Oh, it doesn't matter. It's okay if he doesn't. I don't think that'll be an issue, but I don't know why it wouldn't show up. It's default on mine. I wouldn't worry about it right now, but that is kind of odd that it doesn't pop up. I've always seen it just pop up, but it's in the background. It doesn't come up on your app at all. But that might indicate something else is going on in the background. So we'll just continue and not and hope for the best on that one. So this one here, add field. So we're doing a field name other tree and display type other type of tree. We'll make that 50 again and click add new field. But thanks for fielding the chat there, Priyanka. It's just one thing that gets in front of too many things. Then lastly, let's add in one more question or field. And this one will say comments. And because it'll be the last one in our list, it's okay if it has a length of 256. That's fine. Having a large box at the end of your survey, that's fine if you want to write a short paragraph or something like that on it. That's okay. And then we'll add new field. Click add new field. All along the way, you're going to allow null values. That way, if you want to collect a point without entering in information, you can do so in your field map. Otherwise, it forces you to, if you uncheck that, it forces you to select something. Good. So now we have, in our display, we'll have type of tree, other type of tree, and comments. Those are the three key ones that we're going to be looking at here. Let's click on type of tree, the first one of the bunch. Click on that. And then we're going to create a list, because when we're doing a field data collection app, we want to be efficient. We don't want to be out there in the woods, like typing in over and over again, pine, oak, whatever your survey point of interest is. You don't want to have to retype it every time. So we're going to create a list of options on this one. And to create lists, we'll go over, after clicking on it, we'll go over to the right side, select create list. And this time we're just going to go down, and what I'd like you to do is just create a list of typical trees in your area. Pine. By the way, the label can have spaces in it. The code cannot. You have to have the underscore or just one word in the code area. Once you've added in one, click the next. And add some trees that you know might be in your area. Mine remembers what I put in earlier. And I don't know. So after you put in a few trees, whatever you like, last one, and this is important, the last label type in other. So it's important that the last one is other. Give you all a minute to do that. Good. And once you've done this, and this is important, I'm going to move my zoom out of the way. The bottom right-hand corner, click Save. Good. So the reason that we put the other at the end and why that's pertinent is, let's go back up to using the back arrow at the top part, tree point, back up one level. Click on tree point again. Click on data. Click on fields. If you get lost there, you don't catch up. It's fine if you just watch this part. The reason we put in other is because in the field maps designer, which now they call designer, they just changed that recently. It used to just be called field maps, which I actually agree with this change because then it like alleviates some confusion when everything's called field maps. But anyhow, when we go into our field map designer here in a moment, the tree type is if you answer other, conditionally, then other type of tree will pop up as an option in your survey app. So it's sometimes called cascading select. It can be conditional visibility is another terminology for it. But but that's why we put other in there, because we'll make that conditional visibility setting in Field Map Designer. But before we do that, let's move on and create a map. And now that we've created the features that we're going to be collecting. And with that, we'll go up to that little cluster of dots at the top right-hand corner. My favorite cluster of 9 dots. And you might have to search through your different options until you find Map Viewer. Not to be confused with Map Viewer Classic that Maggie mentioned earlier. I agree, there's a couple little things in there that I still like reminisce about how I like about it, but now that I'm used to Map Viewer, there's most, but not all things seem to be a little more efficient here. I'm going to click on Map Viewer and have this come up. Good. Nice thing about Map Viewer is that when you go to add in data, it's going to point you to the last layers that you created or the most recent layers that you created. So by default, it should pop up with layers here. There's also a plus add button at the top, but the layers is by default pops up, and you can add with this little drop down button here. Click on that and then browse layers. Again, by default, it should bring up the most recent files that you created. So you have the tree point, the tree polygon, the tree line, those are all available. So let's add each one of those in there and simply clicking the add button next to them, starting with the tree point. Good. Tree line and tree polygon. So just click on add on each one of those. And then you can use the little back arrow to reduce this add layer section or to reduce it down. So now you can see the polygon line and point. I guess I have to rearrange these. I could have entered them in reverse order. All I have to do is drag and drop the one that I want on top up. So that'd be the point, followed by the line, followed by the polygon. Good. So these are all in here, but you can see there's nothing on the map. And the reason for that is we have not collected anything yet. So what we'll do is, because we're all kind of California centric, let's move the map over and zoom in on California. So California is centered on our map. And this is fairly important. Well, when it comes to map viewers, you see this kind of topographic map, kind of like loosely called a topographic map in the background, like with some elevation texture and so forth. This is great for a lot of maps, but it isn't necessarily great for field data collection, because when you get, it's way more useful to be able to see like the trees and the houses around you and so forth. So what we'll do is we'll change the base map behind this. And to do that, you go over to this little ribbon on the far left-hand side. And I'm going to explain a little bit about Map Viewer in a second once we have some data in here, because it'll make more sense once we have data in. We'll go down. There's tables. There's base map is the fourth option down. So there's add layers, tables, base map, and click on base map. And for field data collection, typically, like virtually always, I use the hybrid imagery option as the second one down and click on that. Good. And then we can, once you've clicked on that, you can see there's other options on there. But again, having this this aerial or satellite imagery background is much more useful for orienteering in the field and identifying objects and so forth, and seeing what the points refer to. And then after we've done this, we can click X next to base map to reduce that or get rid of it. All right, a little bit about Map Viewer while we're here. So the way this works is you have, and this is kind of a convention in a lot of most apps that at ESRI, Esri, the parent company of ArcGIS and all these apps uses now, is having this vertical series of options, general options across the side. And see, if I click on layers, you see a pane that's called a pane pops up that has the layers that are available under there. If I click on base map, it gives me a pane for base maps. There's bookmarks that gives you a pane. And last but definitely not least, there's the save option. So if you go down and click on that, click save as right now. You could save frequently and often. Click save as. You'll see this pop up. And just like we did with the feature layer earlier, then we can give it a title. And I'm going to just give it a random title. You can, I don't know what the directions say anymore, but it's whatever's intuitive to you, for like, for example, Field Maps Workshop. Let's see. I probably said this 5 times before, I think. So I'm going to say 7, maybe, who knows. I'm going to give it a little different name. You just say Field Maps Workshop. Again, I probably have redundant layers of that in mind. And again, this is where you don't want to have spaces in this, because this is going to be a display name and some when it comes into some maps. Put it in your, if you have a folder, you just leave it at your default, but just for my sake, I'm going to put it in my junk folder. And then we also have to add a tag. You might say field maps, you might say tree collector, whatever suits you. It's intuitive. And putting thought into that again is usually useful. And then finally, we'll click on save. Good. So once we've saved that, I'm going to show you a couple things that we will want to do here at this level. If we go back up to layers, we'll save that again later, by the way, but I like to save things frequently. Click on the tree point. And this is actually something that can break things later on. At least it used to, and I haven't tried to break it again for some time. But what I'm referring to is if you change the style of your points, some styles just do not, they're not compatible with the mobile app. And so nothing will show up. And I'll show you what I mean. If you click, so if you have tree point clicked on the left-hand side, you'll have the general set properties of that will pop up, including symbology. And right below that tree point, there'll be edit layer style. Click on that. By the way, this is don't change your style right now. Just you can follow along, but you can take these steps nonetheless, but we won't change our style much. We're going to change sizes. So we'll select style options. So under 2, click style options. And then you'll see the symbol style. You can click on the pencil for editing this. And you'll see this basic point. I actually like the basic point. This is a really good default in my opinion. The sizes aren't usually what I want, but the point itself is good. But it's not the only thing you're stuck with. If you click on that, then you'll have a variety of other options. And this is where I was saying, depending on what you select here, it can break your field map collector. At least it used to. I don't know if they've fixed that or not. And an example of that is all these basic shapes appear to work fine. But if I use something like Firefly, the last time I tried it, field maps didn't like Firefly. It just wouldn't show up whatsoever. Same goes for some of the government stuff that I've tested. So you have a variety of options in there. But don't worry if you want to have more kind of creative license in your symbology at a later time. This is just important when it comes to your to your collection here for now. Later on, you can change it. You can show it in another map with changing the symbology there and not have it break things. And I'll show you that at the very end, at least with ArcGIS Pro. Good. So just leave it as the default. And we'll just back up. So use the little back arrow here. What we will do is change the size. Let's make it 30 instead of 20. And then go down and click done. And click done again. So while this is still selected, as long as it's got the blue on there, or we can click on tree point again. And then again, it'll pop back up. I'm going to show you another little, there's a number of options that are available here that would be more of a whole web or map viewer kind of workshop, but you can, there's the styles that we already addressed right there. You can filter stuff when your data sets gets more complex. There's effects, aggregation, but here's one that is usually pretty useful when it comes to field maps is your pop-ups. So we'll click on pop-ups. And so you'll see that the title, you can adjust these, by the way that they look when it pops up. You see title of this. We don't need to have the 4. I just have to do that for the sake of avoiding duplicate file names but I can change the title to be what I want it to be. I can do conditions and select fields. But what I would like to do though right now is, I'm going to click up with the options, up with the field maps. If you can reduce those up to the point where you can, or scroll down until you see add content, click on add content. And then we're going to add text. So this is kind of a workaround, nifty way of being able to reference other information about a point. So you could say something like, for more information, for more tree information, click here. And what we might do is I'm going to go up. I brought it up earlier. See if it's still there. Calscape. There we go. You can just, if you wanted, you could Google like tree identification guides, whatever, but Calscape has one that's fairly good. It's got a bunch of information about different trees. What I do is I take the hyperlink for that, or the URL for that, Control C. And if you don't have time to do this, if you don't want to go searching for something like Calscape or whatever, that's fine. This could be just show and tell to see how this works. I go back to my field maps window, highlight over, click here, and then use the little chain link to add in a URL. And this is important. You have to click the green save option or it won't stick. And then you also have to click OK. So what that does is once you collect a point, you can go onto your app and look at it, click on it, and it'll bring you to that or any viewer to that link that you added with your features that you just created. Good. And so there's other things on here. One, just so here's a heads up. This is something, and I haven't tested this again, but this used to be the way it was, and I didn't want to every time I work on this, I don't want to restart if it still is the case. But down at the bottom, let's see, where is it? Edit. So if I click on edit, and we'll come back to this in a little bit, you have the ability to click on a feature. Don't do this, by the way, what I'm about to kind of talk to. See how if I bring my point out over the map, you see a little dot that's available that makes it appear that you can add a point to your map. Don't do that before you actually collect a point with your field map app. I don't know why I don't know. I haven't tried it lately, but for the first year or two when I've tried doing that, if you add a point here before you add a point in your field map, it changes something and then your field map will not work for your data collection. Again, that's not at least the way it used to be. You always want to collect your first point with your field map. After that, you can do edits and you can do add points to your heart's content, and it works fine. But it changes something in the system or in the pipeline when you add it here first. It breaks it in the field map. It's a little nuance. So I just wanted to call that out just in case it doesn't cause you heartache later on or wasted time. Good. So once we have that in there, again, we don't have points on the screen. It's not much to see on your map, but we will want to save again. So go over to the left-hand side where it has a little blue dot that indicates that the new changes haven't been saved. Click on that and then click save. And fortunately, since we added in the tag information and so forth, it should be all set now. Now, just for a heads up, you want to remember the name of your the name of what this is here, or your field maps workshop is your map, because in the next step in the field map designer, it's going to we're going to need to know that. Actually, it'll probably pop up like right away, but still. So let's do that now. We're going to adjust your field map designer to set conditional selection. And then after that, we'll let everybody kind of wander out in the field and collect or outside around your place and collect some data. By the way, this workshop goes much, much faster when there's not 30 people with questions. But so if anybody has questions, this is a good time to ask. I'm going to check the chat. Well, one of the pre-populated map with study points that a field collector would edit. Okay, so that's a good question. So David is asking, what if you wanted to pre-populate your map with study points that a field collector would edit? Okay, so you'd have to make sure that your points are editable and synced. And how you do is if you had already pre-populated points, then and hopefully this would work, because again, if you create stuff outside of field maps first, at least previously, it broke the app and wouldn't let you see them or edit them. But assuming that you could, you would go in and add your pre-populated data, and I'll show you an example of one of those right now. So I'm going to browse layers in my contents. Trying to remember, there's one, I think the name of it is search native trees of California. There we go. I'll add this to my map. We'll be referring to this here very shortly. So native trees of California. Once I've added this in there, I could save my map again. And then when you publish this to your, once you published it from your field map designer and the settings of this, I already know that the settings of this native trees of California is set to be editable and set to be synced and set up to add attributes. You can move those points around in your field map. And I'll show you how you can do that here shortly. After we do some collection, of course. So that's how you'd bring something in. Hopefully that answers the question.
I think my question was more like the part that breaks. If I wanted to say just add a point and make this more faster for someone in the field to find the study points that we're using in a location. If I added it in beforehand, it seems like it breaks it, or you need to add a separate layer somehow. I'm trying to think about how to approach that.
Well, you could put in points, and actually this would be a good one for office hour, because I know that there's an inventory workflow that we have written up that I haven't referred to for like a couple years or so, but where you can have it snap to local points and make it so you could create like a multi part, like you can add attributes like time sequence of information to given points. So we do have a script for doing that would be a little bit more deep of a process, if that's kind of what you're referring to. Or you can just have a layer that you put in that you can refer to.
Do you mean a little bit more like having points to mark your study sites and then have people go and then collect the data at each site? So like have the sites marked ahead of time?
For example, if I have a study plot and there's 10 oak trees in it and we're studying those over time, and I have the geo points on that already, and I just want to make a map so that my field collectors don't spend the time doing that, they can just edit some attribute about those trees, right? Like I don't need them to locate it as much as just be able to edit those things. But if they have to go do it in field, then
Sean,
that's
I think you may want to refer him to related tables and collecting data to a related table.
Right. So yeah, and I recall we had a write-up on how to do that. It's a little bit deeper of a process. And if we again, if you want to do that, you can jump on the office hours. But you might see that I can show you here in a little bit, you can edit features if this editability toggle buttons are correctly set in your settings for that given file, then you can edit it in the field map and add information to it. I'll show you how to do that here in a moment when I bring up the field map.
Okay, thanks.
Steps. Cool. All right. Good questions, by the way. I like it. So I'm gonna X that one out of here because trees of California, I don't need that on my map for right now. Oops. Where's it at? Here, let's get into my layers. And I'm going to remove that one. Good. So this would be my blank map. And once you have it all done, you would save it. And oh, by the way, once you're all done, in case I don't want to, once this is all done and you set your sharing settings for this, then it will you can share this with anybody anytime. So say their share map is one of the next ones down below the top point. Right now, we don't need to do this, but just so you know, referring to those groups in public and everybody, so you can select organization if you want to share it to your organization, or you can select groups. So you can edit group sharing and click one of your groups that we mentioned before. So there's sharing settings there that this might be useful for. Though what we'll be working with here very soon is sharing with everybody, and that'd be for more crowdsourcing to your group, your people that you might want to all be simultaneously in kind of an enterprise effort collecting your data. Good. So but for now, I just want to show you that you don't have to worry about it. Good. So next step, the Field Maps Designer, formerly known as just Field Maps, or a Field Maps app. So go to your cluster of buttons at the top, click on Field Map Designer, and inside here, we'll see that we have the previous, the last one we worked on should be the first thing that pops up, and you click on that. So I'm going to start from the bottom and work back up to the top just because then the last thing we're going to be working on is the forms information. We'll start down at the bottom, just clicking on sharing. You can adjust that sharing level that I just showed you before with sharing it to your organization or everyone or groups. You can do that from here as well, instead of just within your the lower levels. By the way, if you change the settings here, the effect will cascade backwards, so the other files that are underneath it will get adjusted to the sharing level that you've set. So say if you share like a map that has different layers in it that are, some might be not shareable. If you change the sharing levels and those layers are ones that you own, that you have the authority to be able to share with other people, then the sharing level it'll allow those to be seen on your maps that you produce. Moving up, there's offline. You can click on this. The main thing with offline use is that if you went up and you clicked the toggle on, it's not allowing me to do that because, oh, it's saying this one's missing a global ID. Okay, that's where it's gonna, so now I know why that's important. And I wonder why it didn't, maybe because I didn't enable sync on it. That's probably it. I enabled sync on the first two. That explains why there was no global ID produced. Bear with me for 1 second because, David, this might answer your question from earlier. Everybody can pause here, but I can go back and check to see if I can fix that in a pinch. And the way I would do that is I need to just stay on the screen. I'm going to back up to, there we go, to my content. I go into my content, go down to my polygon layer is the one that was broken. Go to settings, scroll down, enable sync, save. Now, if I go back to whichever one I was working on here and I refresh this, see if that fixes it. Voila, it fixes it. All right. So David, that was the issue why you didn't have a global ID earlier, is because you have to toggle on the sync option. And then once that's turned on, then you can click it for offline use. So if that's it, being there as a polygon layer, that might not. And if you and when we take a break, David, if you want to go back to your content inside go to your layer and then go to the settings, scroll down under layers, there'll be sync will be like the fourth option. Then you can click on that and then save it again, and then your syncing will be available. It's not going to matter really functionally for what we're doing here, but this is so for your own interest. Good. And then forms. If I go up, I'll skip georeferences, but we'll go up to forms. And this is where we're going to set our conditional visibility. And how we do this is we're going to go in to click on the tree point layer first. So we're under layers, click tree point, and you'll see a pane pop up on the right-hand side of your screen. And if you scroll down, you'll see this at the very bottom under fields. You'll see tree type, other type of tree, and comments, the ones that we created with the domains before. This is important. The first one that you want to put in is your tree type. So to do that, double click it. So double click tree type and it'll pop up. Now the next two, we'll just drag and drop. We'll just grab this. You can do it 2 ways, drag and drop or double click. So we'll have the first one, and this is important because the first one is it will be the first in the order of the questions, and then comments would be last. So we have tree type, other type of tree, and comments. Now remember, if we select pine here, and so we have, if you click on this and you scroll down, you'll see, well, there's actually like a list that's attached to this. If we ended up selecting pine, other type of tree is not pertinent. So what we're going to do is under the other type of tree, we'll go over to the right-hand side, go down to the bottom, and this is like a slight change that happened a year ago. Next to visibility, visible, so logic, visible, there's that little gear it's the second up from the bottom, visible. Click on that little gear. And we're going to add an expression for visible. Follow that. So click on the gear next to visible. And with this, we can leave the title. It doesn't matter what the title of the expression is, but we're going to say condition is that, use the drop down arrow from the first one, type of tree is other. And then click done. So now when you click well, not quite yet, but when you're in your app and you click other, then you'll see that'll pop up the other type of tree question. But before we get that far, this is really important and very important, is a little teeny weeny save button at the top right-hand corner that might be hidden behind your Zoom or something else, that you must click that little disk, that old computer disk that probably only old people like me and remember. But clicking that little disk at the top right-hand corner, that'll save that and it'll stick. Otherwise, if you migrate out of this and try to go on to the next steps, it will totally not work for you whatsoever. Good. So now we're set. We're pretty dialed in to be able to collect data. So with that said, I'm going to go onto my phone. I have actually, did my phone drop off? I guess it might have. Oh no, it's still logged in. I am going to stop sharing on this screen. Now, all of this is set up now in Field Map, so it should be ready to go. Good. After the save is the last option. I'm going to stop sharing and oops, I'm going to check my chat first. Make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay, cool. It saved. Solved an earlier question. Okay, cool. All right, we're set. I'm going to stop sharing. And then I'm going to share with my cell phone. Good. All right. It'll be pretty close to the same thing with whatever phone you're using. It's Android or iPhone. There's only a couple little nuances that I think are intuitively figured out. But what you want to do, and this is after you've got your ArcGIS Online account, and by the way, it would be very useful if you used if you're on the ArcGIS login, the one that was given to you through our organization, so we can all collaboratively do this. Click on Field Map. So you can't see, I don't think I can do annotation necessarily from one since I'm on my phone. But what I'm going to do is just click on the field maps icon there on the right. And if you all could do that, that'd be great too. I'm going to back up because this just shows where the last things that I was working on in recent projects. And I forget what I called this. Remember I said to remember what the name of the map was, and I've already forgot. So I'm going to pop back and look. Tree Field Maps Workshop 7 is what I called it. So I'll go on my phone and type in for search. There we go. Finally, if I type in the in the correct name, I could click on that in your case. But before I would click on it, this is what you would do is see those little 3 dots over to the right hand side. You can click on those. You can view details or add offline area. So we'll click on view details to start with. So it'll show you just various info about the map, just so you can see what's there. Then we'll go back. And then, oh man, do I have to type it in again? So click on those 3 dots again. I can favorite that. I will for now, just so it pops up so I don't lose it again. I'll go into add offline area. So this is where you can, if everything's set up to sync correctly, what you can do is zoom in. See, there's like this little teeny square there. Once you zoom in, that square will enlarge. And wherever I'm at the UCANR building in Davis, I could set this to download that area. We're not going to do that because it takes a few minutes to do so, but just know that's how you get a downloaded area for offline use. So I'm going to back up out of that now. I have it set as my favorite, so it's at the top again, and I will click on it and have it come in. See, it's set to zoomed into my local area. If I go up to the top buttons at the top right-hand corner, you're going to have a variety of options that are available up there. Bookmarks, edit multiple. There's share map, so you have options there that are available to you. You have you can change you can see what your layers are by clicking the little layer stack at the top. I'm going to back up out of here because I want to see why. I want to do the drop down. Once okay. I'm going to see view details. I was looking for where we do the peripheral G. Oh, I have to do that at a higher level. Okay, so in the settings for actual field maps itself, if I back up all the way up to just the very top of field maps, and there's the little person at the top right-hand corner. I think it might be in the left-hand corner on iPhones, if I remember correctly. But you can see the person at the top. If you click on that, then you can go into collection settings. And here you can set, you can change like snapping, accuracy, the averaging, the streaming distance. So if you're collecting a line or something in your path, it'll record every 10 feet as you move along. So those are useful. Also useful is you can change your unit sometimes. And there's provider. So you can add a provider here that would be in the case of if you had like an MLID or a bad elf or something to that effect. This is where you would do that. I just want to give you that information so you have it. So that's done at this top level of field maps, not actually in the workshop. What I'm going to want you to do, you can bring in your own. You probably won't have like a list of like, I don't know, I probably have 100 more or something like that in mind, but you can bring in your own map and favorite it. But here's something that I'll have you do oops, my phone almost went to sleep there. I'll have you do this. Search because I've shared it organizationally. I think it's called Collaborative Field Maps Practice is the name of that. And the reason for that is then each of us can add data to this one. It's, by the way, it was created in the same workflow that we all just did, but the difference is that it's just shared. So it's shared organizationally. And so we can each collect these features. So search for that, Collaborative Field Maps Practice, and it should pop up. If it doesn't, let me know in the chat. And click, and then click on that. Good. Now, if I zoom out, you'll see that around California, they have these dots. David, to your question earlier, if I click on one of those dots, you'll see that there's a whole bunch of them. If I zoom in, say, to one of these, oh, there's a whole cluster of them. That's where I did a workshop. I forget where this is at. But if I click on one of those dots and it pops up, I can edit that. And that's where you can add data to your collection. You want to think ahead though in the design of your survey though. So you have multiple fields. Say if you wanted to have it be like annual collection, you might have plan ahead. So you have like 2024, 2025, 2026. You can have sections through your in your app so you know which field to add information into instead of like just pending data that you don't want to lose later on. So yeah, that's where you would do that. Good. So we are very much nicely on time today. So what we do, let me know if everybody's able to get in the Native Trees of California app, and we're going to go do some collection on this. Let me show you a couple things. I'm going to X out of a couple of these. I'm going to click, I'm going to back up to where you can click at the top right-hand corner, by the way, if you navigate away from yourself, and you can say collect data by clicking the little plus sign down on the right. Oh, before we continue that, we're not going to do this, but I'll show you how. There's the new feature for a tree line. Click on that. And then there's the three dots to the right. You can click those three dots and you can click start streaming. If you don't need to do that, but if you click that, as you walked around, it would leave like a breadcrumb trail of vertices. Every 10 feet is what we saw in the settings. And then when you stop streaming, they'd be all linked together in a line. So that would be like a way of creating a line. If it was a polygon, on the other hand, I'll back up to the polygon and X out of this because I don't need to collect a line, discard. If I collected a polygon, it's a little different. I could create a new feature, polygon. And what you can do on this one is just click around and add point, and see how it's creating a polygon for the area by you clicking the vertex of the area. Likewise, you can start streaming and walk the perimeter of something and have it, and then at the end when you stop streaming, and then it'll click it all together as one unit. So into a polygon, it'll connect the last to the first vertex for the shape. But we're not going to do that, so I'm going to click X out of that and discard. Good. Any questions on that? What I'd say we can do right now, so it's 3:01. Let's take a 20-minute break. It's always nice to go out and stretch our legs and go out and collect a couple points. You can use the Native Trees of this collaborative field maps practice app. Go out and collect some trees in your area, just right, and it doesn't have to be accurate. You can, something else, I almost forgot. How can I forget this? This is a fun thing too. If I want to collect a tree, I can do a plus, create new, just a point. I can take a photo I'm going to say where I'm sitting. I'm going to just go in the building right now. I'm going to say click take photo. Set in the A&R building. Good. Apparently I'm a tree now. Click OK. And then type of tree, I might see other. It'll be the last thing. Click other. Look, you see the cascading option that came down, other type of tree. Put my, oops, clumsy on my keys today. And then comment. And just put, I have a comment, and then once I'm done with this, I'll check it. Good. And watch, if I'm going to stop sharing right now, and I'll toggle back to my map. Okay. Let's see, where's the, got to get back out of my phone, find the right spot, stop sharing. Oh, where'd it go? No, that's not what I wanted. Actually, I don't need to have the Zoom on anymore, so I'll just leave us. Good. Now I can share here my screen. And in near real time, here's the map that's based on that one. I am down here in Davis. So if I zoom in, I click on this dot here. Look at, that's the picture I just took on my web app. So in near real time, there it pops up. Good. Almost got ahead of us before we left. So let's do this actually. If I assume everyone's still here, let's reconvene at 3:25. So give ourselves 20 minutes to stretch our legs, go out and collect some points with that. And then when we get back, we'll just look at some of the points in pictures that folks have collected and finish up strong with a little bit of experience builder and a little show and tell on ArcGIS Pro. And we're off to a wonderful weekend, right? All right. See you all in about 20 minutes. All right, we'll get started again. And I see that there is a comment from Nancy for when we return. How do we get the visible to show under other type of tree? And I'm not quite following you on that. I'm not sure what the what that's referring to. I can go and guess though. Nancy, you can unmute if you want to clarify what the issue is.
Hi, it was the last thing you had us do when you switched over to your phone.
Okay. Oh, I know what you're talking about. Okay, I'll go back. I see. All right. So when we're in the field maps, okay, so to make this visible, okay, here's where this is the way this works. So once we're in,
You want to be sharing something?
oh, shoot. Yeah, I forgot. Good catch.
No problem.
Got too excited about like answering the question. Forgot to click share. There we go. All right.
Perfect.
So what I did is I brought up the field map designer, and inside here, so if we go to forms and click on the tree point layer that we want to be editing, and we want to have other type of tree only be visible when tree type is selected as other. So how we do that is we click on the other type of tree, that one there that we have, and scroll down, and under visible, so down there's the logic, and below that there's visible, and there's the little gear next to that, and click on the gear. So we have one expression there. I can delete it though, just for now, so we can start over, delete that expression, and we'll start anew. So under visible, clicking the gear, we'll click a new expression, And in this expression, we're going to say not object ID, but type of tree. So type of tree is other. And then when we select done, then it'll make it so on that other type of tree only shows up is when you're in the survey form if you click other for the type of tree, and then it'll have the conditional question to pop up. And you can have these cascading, so you can have it like multiple levels in some surveys. So in the next one you can have like, but it's all list based though, so you're gonna have it work off of a list.
Excellent. I got it. Thank you.
All right, cool. All right. So we're down in the home stretch, and with this, we're going to jump into, well, first, I want to take a look to see what kind of data that we collected. So I'm going to go to this collaborative field maps practice map. And in fact, I believe I've shared this with, I'm going to check the sharing settings on this one. Okay, so anyone in the organization, so good. So any one of you can go to, if you're in ArcGIS Online, and I'll go to where we're talking about. If I click on the dots up here, I go, I'm gonna get my zooms out of the way. If you're in your ArcGIS Online and you want to see what we just collected, you can, it's set to search all of your own content, but you can go to your My Organization across the tab under Content, My Organization, and then you would search for collaborative the full name, Collaborative Field Maps Practice. Oh, then it pops up first thing on mine. So if you click on that, you'll see this. And if we zoom out, we'll see the different dots. If depending on where all of you are at, you can go on and click. There's some places down by Fresno. You can see the Redwood GPS, the picture associated out here. Remember that step I had earlier? For more information, click here. I can click on that and it'll give me more information about trees that might be pertinent. That would also pop up on your phone if you had internet connectivity as well. So take a second. You can, if you want to get into your ArcGIS Online, search for collaborative field maps practice and bring it up and go and find some of your tree dots. See, there's a whole cluster around here. These are probably and so sometimes you'll have two of them, too many of them are overlap. So there's multiple in one spot. Good. Take a second again. You can look around.
I have a quick question. So I collected a line in a polygon as well, and I wasn't able to, there was no option to select type of tree or take a photo. Is that only possible with a point, or are those just features that we didn't enable for the line and the polygon?
Oh, that's a great question. And that's and a pretty simple answer. The way you would do that is you would go in your content before you did the collection. You would go to those features. Oops, where's my content? My content. There we go. I'm still in the organization. If I went to my tree polygon layer, remember how we added the domain fields that were available to us? We can click on that polygon, go to data and fields like we did before. And we can go in here and we can add questions here, just like we did with the point. I just didn't want to burn time doing it redundantly. But yes, you can do that with a point line or a polygon and add questions.
Gotcha. Awesome. Thank you.
Sure. Good question. Good. So now once we've created a map, let's do this. We will go into Experience Builder. And to do that, go up to the little the cluster of dots at the top of your ArcGIS Online. So I might let you have a second to navigate up there, so you can, depending if you're still here, you still have the cluster of 9. Click on that and then select Experience Builder. And then you'll go up to Create New is the new one that you're going to create. I'm not going to go too deep into creating new, how to do Experience Builder, but I will give you a tip on how you can explore this multitude of different templated formats that are designed with different infographics and widget options that are available. But we're going to start off with the most basic and simple of these is the blank full screen is the first one you see at the top left-hand corner. So click on the Create next under blank full screen. Now, many of these templates, they all work fairly similarly, but there are differences. But to get like a basic orientation to each one of them, just as a tip, down at the bottom left-hand corner, there's this little question mark, and there's a show help guide. We're not going to do it right now, but if you want to like get kind of a little guided tour, and it's a pretty mini guided tour, but it'll give you some of the like a gist of where things go or how they work within that given template. So each one of the templates have this little help guide that's available. But right now, I'll just walk you through some of the steps that might be included in there. The first of which is we'll go up to the top, and just like the map viewer, your general options are along your left, and then you'll end up having some conditional options that will pop up later on over on the right side of your screen where you change your settings and so forth, you'll see. But first, we're going to add a map. So we're going to do map-centric options first, and we're going to add a map by clicking on map. So it's under plus. If the plus is selected, click map, drag, and drop that onto your screen. And it'll pop up here, and it's just going to be plain. It's not going to be the map that you just created, but that's fine. We're going to work with that. What we'll do is we'll just take the corners of this and drag it all the way up to the very corners of your Experience Builder window. So, dang it. Why can't I get to the corner of it now? There we go. Good. So it's down, so it spreads across all the way across your screen. Now what we'll do is we're going to select a map. Once we've added the map pane in there, or window in there, we'll go over to the right and select map. Click select map. And under select map, we're going to say search. And let's go with the collaborative whatever this was again called under my Zoom, collaborative field maps practice. What the heck? Why isn't it not giving me, I just did this. Select map. Oh, I know why. Gee, I just left. I forgot a simple step. Dang. Okay. First, what we got to do, I just forgot to do one little thing. first thing we'll do is we'll go over to this little stack of data on the left-hand side. We have to add the map in before we can select the map. So we'll select add data. You could add in your field maps, the one that you just created, but you probably don't have a lot of data in there, so it won't be all that interesting. So we'll go to My Organization, and that's where you click and you add in your collaborative. There you go. And then once you start getting far enough, it'll get this collaborative field maps practice map, and you can click on that and select done. Now, when you go to the back up to the plus sign and the field, the maps is selected, we can select map, and that's the first option, the only one that's available, and then it pops up on your screen. Good. By the way, if you want to adjust the zoom size, you can just click on the map here, which is a handy little thing, and it'll pop it right to the zoom extent of the map that we created earlier. We can drag to get it into the position that we want it. Now, so that was like one map element is the actual map itself. I'm going to check the chat. Good. Oh, okay. So there's a David answered a question that's great down there. Okay, good. So once we have this in here, let's add a couple more little elements just for practice on how to add things to a map, because there's all these different widgets. There's so many of them. You can add in the map, you can add a legend, you can have measurement tools, my location, that might be interesting. I don't know. You can throw that over as some kind of get location. But I'm gonna delete that. I don't need that for this given one. But what might be interesting, and this does pertain to maps that get more complex, is a legend. So let's go up to the top, grab legend, and pull it down. And you can see it uses up quite a large area here. And there's the 3 options that are available. We can get that down to a more manageable area. You might like that style, and I'll show you how to adjust this in a minute. And let's put in some text. Let's see, where's the text? Put in title. Proper map should have a title, right? Text. Grab the text and drag it up to the top of the screen, somewhere centered. You can see that it has a blank background. So this is where I was talking about, where you have your general options and your contents on the left, and then the functionality to edit these things on the right. And in this case, since we have it active with the little white brackets around it and so forth, then the style options are available on the right-hand side. First off is the text is way too small. So let's make it something like 30. So under the text format, paragraph, Avenir next, 30, and click enter after you're done to make it stick. And then click the little font color right below it. See where it's just straight under, almost right under the 3. Let's change it to white so it pops out. And then I'm going to show you another thing to make it even pop out more. Good. Let's make it really pop out by changing the style one more level. We'll go up to style at the top right and scroll down to background. Let's do a custom background. And fill, and let's make it black, or we can make it gray, something to make it pop out a little bit. Good. Now that it's a little bit more apparent, I can get in there and start typing. Let's see, native trees. And then you can adjust the box around it. So you see it's not centered. So we can go back to text on the right-hand side. Content. Under text, there's option of centering it. If we want it, we can have other spare character effects that you might do, but I'm not going to worry about character effects right now. This looks good enough to me. I'll probably adjust this so it's a little bit more, a little better. Good. By the way, you could do the same thing with the legend if you wanted to. If you click on the legend, you have the same options of changing the style and the content. So you can change the style where the background can be black and we can go, oh, we have to click advanced. So we can change the text to white and the background to black. So it matches the theme of the other part, if you feel so inclined. Except for the problem is the 3 polygons black, so it just disappears. Might not want to do that. So, but just know that you can do that there if you want to. Good. So once you have this finished, so just this is one of those things where terminologies within web mapping gets kind of complex, or well, at least confusing in a lot of cases. The names are so close together. What we worked on here, just you don't have to follow me, or like you don't have to change screens right now. When we worked on, say, a map like this, or the map that you created, the other web map that we just created, this is a web map that we're looking at here. When we go into Experience Builder, we're creating a web mapping application. And the web mapping application, that includes all of these other infographics, sometimes north arrows, sometimes widgets, titles, all that sort of thing. That's when it becomes a web mapping application. And so that's what, just to differentiate what the names of those are. And in a web mapping application, that's when you add in the map elements, these widgets and so forth that you put in there. And that can be a whole computer cartography workshop, which, by the way, we do have a computer cartography workshop. Thanks to Shane Fire, it's put a really nice one together. And if you're interested in that, you can go to the UCANR-IGIS YouTube channel. And all of our videos get uploaded there, including this one about, actually it'll be late next week because I'm teaching another workshop next week, but there's but all of our past content's on there and it's fairly popular. So you might want to refer back to that if you have other geospatial tech kind of study stuff that you might want to do. But I digress. So now that we have this all done, what we'll do is I need to get my zoom out of the way. We will save it. So we see at the top right-hand corner of the screen, click the save option. Good. And then if you'd like to publish it, you can. So you go over to publish and it's publishing. And one more step that might be important to you or might not, go into the drop down with the 3 buttons and let's see, change sharing settings. This is where if you want to go to the settings for this, oops, sorry, back to overview, share. This is where you change it to everyone can see. So everyone can see this. And it doesn't mean they can't edit the underlying layers, but they can see the map. And then I set save. So those ones aren't not set to share, but I can update. That's fine. And so it's updating the underlying layer so it can be visible to other people. And then once I've done this, and I go back to the Experience Builder and I push the launch button, that little arrow, you can see the map pop up. This might entail, like, this is where you'll check to see, oh, I got to move my native trees because my window was like kind of scrunched up for the sake of the workshop. But you can make the adjustments back in experience builder where I clearly have to adjust this up to the correct position and make make the necessary changes and then resave it and republish it. But once you've done so and you've saved it, you can take this URL and email it to your boss or your neighbor or your mom or whoever you want, and it'll pop up just like a regular website that you can have this data. And then those dots on there could be in real time, or like again near real time, of if someone collects more data, then it's automatically populated over time. So if you say you have like surveys of customers or clients or whatever, they collect more data in the field, and instantly you get a geospatial position for their survey results. Check the chat. Okay, someone's getting a "you're not authorized to access this service." I'm not sure. That might be a more complex. I'd have to see what you're talking about, David, on that one. And that might be a setting of your user level if you got a training account. I don't know. That's how there's different setting, like tiers of function, like as an administrator versus a user and that sort of thing in ArcGIS Online. So there, but yeah, so you're not authorized to share stuff. Maybe that's a training account sort of thing. Okay, but anyhow, yeah, so there you have this web, and it's not necessarily beautiful, but with some more edits, it could be it could be improved. And again, we can if I go back, say my native trees box is too low, I can move that up. I can get over here and zoom and change the edge of this. So it goes all the way over to the proper edge of the screen, which I didn't realize I needed to do before. And so now it should be squared up a lot nicer. Get the proper spacing. Sometimes you have to change the underlying position of the map below, and you do that in the map viewer if you want to change the size there, or say pop-up information and that kind of thing. And once I've done that, I will save it one more time. Go back to my map. Oop, wrong one. This one. Refresh it. And there, it looks a lot better, right? Good. And if I go in here again in this viewer, we have the pop-ups enabled, so you can just zoom in and see the information and have the full functionality. All right. Now, if anyone's interested, this is where well, two things. One, any questions or suggestions, requests. In a moment, we're going to put a survey link in the chat while we're here. If you could please fill that out. We really, really appreciate it when we get feedback. It shows that we're like hopefully on the right course. We take those very seriously, and we try to update and improve our workshops all the time. And it also serves for when it comes time to report on our users and their impacts of this training. So Priyanka just put the survey in the chat. If you could please fill that out, you probably get an email later or two to that effect. That'd be very much appreciated. And while you're filling that out, I'm going to do a little show and tell that might be of interest of any of you that works with ArcGIS Pro.
I have a super quick question. I'm sorry if I missed it, but say I wanted to zoom into one specific area on the map, like just Davis, and see the points there. How do I zoom in and out in the experience builder?
Oh, okay. So that's a good question. So here's the when you mean at this level, right?
Yeah, like it's at this level now of all of California, but say I wanted my map only to show Davis in finer detail.
Okay, here I'll show you how you might do that. So we go to the map frame. So you can set the initial view, set a custom level, modify, and you can set the view level to just Davis.
Awesome. Thank you.
And then once you're there, then you say, okay. And then that's what your map view will be after that. That's a good question. I'm glad you mentioned that.
I
That's
just pasted this in the chat, but I think by default, it's whatever your web map is saved at. So if you go back to where it was brought into a map in Map Viewer, whenever that's saved, it'll be the default. So if you mess around with it and then come back and you're like, why did it change? That might be it. So custom is probably a safer way to do it.
Yes, and so that actually is a great point. In some web mapping applications, I mean, story maps, for example, it's going to always go to the default. No, I take that back. Some story map functions, you can do that. In the past, there have been web map application building tools that don't have this customization at this level. And the way around that is you would go back to the map, zoom into the area that you want to cover, and then save your map there, and then that becomes the default for this here. But this is easier. And it's better to have that like zoomed out level that we actually really want here, because then you can reuse this map in different settings. Good. Any other questions? You can unmute if you have questions too right now. Good. So I'm going to show you just a really nifty little way to bring this data into ArcGIS Pro, which is pretty slick. I'm going to change this to default again. And oops, I got this off. I keep on grabbing it and moving on accident. But so anyhow, if I go down and I start up my own ArcGIS Pro project, note that the name of this file, and here's native trees of California, are those points. Takes a second for ArcGIS Pro to come up. I should have pulled the trigger on that earlier. Got it running. There we go. Now I get it up. I'm going to start a map. And the map, I'm going to put it in. I always love to have trash folders because stuff adds up. And I don't need this tomorrow or next week. So once I bring the project up, this is a pretty neat thing about ArcGIS Pro and how it integrates with ArcGIS Online. It's one of the spokes of that constellation of apps that revolve around the hub of ArcGIS Online now. So here, once we're in here, we can add our online data, and the way that we do that is we'll go over to View at the top. And again, this is just show and tell. You don't have to follow along with this. But just so you know, if for future reference, if you look back on the video or someone's watching this on the video for the first time, View, and then we'll select Catalog Pane. Pops up. Go to your portal. And being that it'll only let you work with your own data to actually manipulate data, but since it is my data, in this case, I can search my content for native trees of California. Click enter, right click that and add to current map. And you see all those dots pop up on there. And if I zoom in, I could zoom in on the map. It might be good with this background. It might not. You can always change the base map just like we did in the application for a little bit more finer like visual reference. And to do that, we can go up to map and base map, hybrid imagery like the other one that we were working with. So you can see the dots on there. So here, this is something that's pretty nifty. Okay, before I continue, this is important. If I go to the native trees of California, I'd put it up at the top and expand it. And I right click on the point layer, go down to properties. Right in the middle at cache, this is a strangely important step. Click cache and select don't cache any data locally. This will make it so it syncs properly with the online data, and click OK. So the reason that we do something like that is now this data we're synced across between ArcGIS Online and this. If I zoom in on the map to say this point right here, and I click on it, I'll see whatever pops up information about it. Maybe I'll go to something else. Like here's one out in the Nevada desert. This might be a better one. Click on this. We have this point there. If we toggle back to our ArcGIS Online, here's the map. So you see that point on here. This is the online environment, not the desktop environment. What if I want to edit this here? I can go down to the edit button. Wait for it. And go select and click on that point there and say I want to put it in Las Vegas or somewhere down here. And then I click update. And I go back to my ArcGIS Pro. Oops, this one close. You see it's up here right now, but if I zoom out, ping, it jumps down to here on in my desktop application. What I can do though is I can edit it the opposite direction as well. I can go to edit here and click move. Click on that. And oops. Why is it not letting me? Should be letting me move this point. I just did this earlier. For some reason, it's not letting me move that. But if we do, if I modify, and I'm able to make any adjustments on this here, then which I won't spend the time to figure out why for some reason it's not letting me move that given point back. Then oh, here we go. Oh, I know why. I have to refresh it here. Now I can move it. If I want to move it south of Lake Tahoe, and I click off of it and then save. If I go back to my online map and I refresh it, you'll see that it moves as well. See, now it's down south of Lake Tahoe. So you can see you can move it back and forth. But what you can do is if you change the symbology, we're right at the hour. If I change the symbology in ArcGIS Pro, that will not carry over to the online. It'll only happen within this environment. So you have more creative license here to be able to set like zoom levels and so forth. And then you can also do publishing this back up as another map as well. To make different edits and so forth. And with that, if you guys can please fill out the evaluation survey, and hopefully this is what you are looking for today. And I really appreciate you coming. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. And don't forget, we have office hours available on Monday, Tuesday afternoons, a YouTube channel, and we have for future trainings that are coming up as well. Thank you and have a great weekend.